All right. I'd like to call to order the May 15th URA budget meeting guidelines. Budget meeting. It is 1:24 in the afternoon. We need to do roll call. Rebecca, would you mind doing that?
Committee Member Pellerin,
Here.
Committee Member McDougall,
Here.
Committee Member Connolly,
Here.
Committee Member Predin,
Here.
Committee Member Smith, Committee Member Cobb,
Here.
Committee Member Mahoney,
Here.
Committee Member Ross.
And should we mention that committee member left the building? So she won't.
Blum. And Blum.
Oh, and committee member Blum is also not here, excuse me. First thing we need to do is the election of a chair. Would anyone like to nominate Nancy?
I would. I'll nominate Nancy.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for taking that on.
You're welcome.
I got it next Wednesday.
Okay. All right. Boy, first thing we do is the budget message between Director O'Neill and I'm assuming Jordan.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you, Chair, members of the Sisters Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee. Thank you for wearing this hat now and sticking with us through the morning and now into the afternoon. Hopefully this is pretty brief. Urban renewal is always an exciting topic. It's one of the few tools that governments have, especially in Oregon. Not all states have tax increment financing and urban renewal as a tool to spur economic and commercial activity and property investment using sort of this tax increment financing mechanism. So Sisters is fortunate that back in 2003, I believe, after going through a whole process of imagining what the downtown could be and how to fund improvements, they established the Downtown Urban Renewal District and the Urban Renewal Agency. So we've had an urban renewal agency for about 20 years. My computer might have froze here. And if you're not familiar with the concept, how does urban renewal work is a long conversation that I hopefully won't go too much into, except to give you kind of the high points so that you understand what the budget, what you're looking at in terms of the tax increment and also how we're funding projects using the mechanism of urban renewal and tax increment financing. This graph kind of demonstrates a good example of how tax increment works. The concept is that when an urban renewal area is established, you create a frozen base of assessed value. So if the district was established in 2003 and it was just under $5 million in terms of total assessed value, that's the frozen base for the district. And then as you make improvements, make investments, property gets redeveloped in that urban renewal area, that becomes the increment. So the excess assessed value that's above that frozen base is your assessed value that then the tax increment is generated on. And so the gray line is actually that incremental value that's occurred in the downtown urban renewal district over and above, which is the blue line is the frozen base. And I also drew in the orange line, which is what it would be conceptually, right? If the city wasn't making investments in public improvements to generate more economic activity that then would increase more value in the district, right? So say nothing happened in the urban renewal area, you would have the orange line as sort of the conceptual, just 3% per year. Yes, there would probably be increases in property values as property owners make investments. But really what this is supposed to demonstrate is that at the end of the district, when we finally close the district and the urban renewal agency goes away, that incremental value now goes towards all the other overlapping tax districts, like the schools, like the fire district, like the city. And so similar to other graphs you've seen today, really things have picked up quite substantially since, 10 years ago. We've seen a lot of investment in town that includes our downtown area, a lot of redevelopment, a lot of development of property. And I think the Urban Renewal Agency can take some credit for that with the projects that have been done in the urban renewal area in the downtown with Cascade, Main Street, Hood Street, First Street Park, all, help supported by urban renewal. And what does that do? That makes a more attractive town, right? It makes, you can walk, you can park, you can go to the splash pad. Makes it attractive for visitors, for residents. It gets people like restaurants and hotels saying, oh, this is an attractive place to invest. And so what do? They redevelop their properties. That spurs private development that then increases assessed values in the downtown. So why is that important? Why is the assessed value and the tax increment important? Because that's how we fund the projects. So with the property taxes that we collect over the frozen base of the assessed values, we could then go and bond or we get loans to pay for debt, which is how you legally have to pay for projects is through issuing debt. In our case, we do a little borrowing from the city to create that debt mechanism that we then pay back immediately in the same fiscal year. This year, we're proposing to go access more funds for projects that are on the council's or the Urban Renewal Agency's goal list through a line of credit. We don't have quite the amount of project and funding needs right now to go out and get a bond, an urban renewal bond for projects. So at this time, we think it's probably a little more prudent, especially with interest rates where they're at, to go get a line of credit that we can draw from and then pay back as we collect the urban renewal property taxes. That makes sense. So this is again another graph that shows that sort of growth in the assessed values in the district and how much more property taxes we're collecting and receiving for the district has really picked up over the last few years. And that's pretty typical of urban renewal areas. It takes some time to build that up as you invest in the district and you get redevelopment happening. So there generally is a lag between when you establish a district and when you really start seeing those benefits pay off in terms of the tax increment. So what investments are we looking at for this budget? So 3 projects in particular are on the docket. We have the roundabout art, enhanced landscaping. That's going to be funded by urban renewal. So it's not part of the project costs from ODOT and the city. And the good news there is that we don't have to go through a federal process, but I guess it's not really bad news, but it's going to take some time. We want to make sure the public's involved. We have outreach going on. We have, selection committees and things like that to kind of choose what art goes there. A big part of the art also is landscaping. If you've seen the roundabouts on the way to Bend, it's just lava rock. It's, fine in its own way, but we're looking to do something a little more enhanced than that here in Sisters. So that's one of the major projects going on. Earlier this, what season are we in? Winter, I guess, the council had a work session and then established a workforce housing grant program. That's one of the goals that has been in the Sisters Downtown Urban Renewal Plan is to support workforce housing. It's kind of that missing housing that a lot of communities are struggling with because there's a lot of state and federal funding for affordable housing. Of course, developers all want to do market rate housing. So we're kind of missing that sweet spot of workforce housing in the 80% to 120% AMI range. And so the board established the workforce housing grant, which we have in the budget, tentative grant award of $400,000 to a nonprofit to construct workforce housing. And then finally, as Paul talked about the West Side Pump Station, that is another project that was in our plan, and there's going to be a contribution from the Urban Renewal Agency of $500,000. So those are the projects. Other than that, the only other thing that's in the budget is a small amount for administration, right? You got to pay staff to actually administer the plan, run the district, have budget committee meetings, and manage the projects. I wanted to talk just briefly a little bit about the future here. Like I said, it's been a pretty successful urban renewal district. That's credit to the town that Sisters is and the success we've seen in terms of drawing visitors and reinvestment in our downtown. But we do have a plan that is pretty fixed in terms of the maximum indebtedness, which is a legal requirement for urban renewal agencies. So that's about 9.9 million. With all the projects that have been completed to date and what are proposed, we have about 4.7 remaining in terms of that maximum indebtedness. We also have in our plan a sort of deadline, I guess, so to speak on that no new projects or debt can be issued after June 30th, 2030. And so we're playing this game right now of seeing, can we issue 4.7 million in debt or accomplish 4.7 million in projects before that expiration date? I think most people would share that interest in spending as much of that maximum indebtedness as possible to get the most out of our district before urban renewal in the downtown goes away, or before we have to start thinking about a new district or something like that, that we really take advantage of what's already been established in the plan that we have. So we're going to be this year looking at the financials, doing projections, seeing where the tax increment is at for supporting as much of that maximum indebtedness as possible, because there's one big project that's remaining is in the plan, and that's the Adams Avenue streetscape improvements. So if you think about all the success and all the work we've done in downtown with Cascade, Main, Hood, Adams is kind of that final piece of creating this walkable, parkable, spurring new development and activity in our downtown is to capitalize and do that project. And other than that, we have some other projects that have been discussed, such as, financial assistance in terms of grants for building hardening or facade improvement grants and things like that. So there's a few more projects that we would have on our list that I hope, we were able to maximize as much of that indebtedness as possible. And there is a council goal to look at that. So we're going to put some financial minds together and see if it's achievable and if there might be interest in looking at that June 30th, 2030 date as far as expiration of the district. So that's kind of the future. And I guess, that's it. Only two departments, the debt service and the capital projects fund. Questions?
On my agenda, sorry, I have public comments. Rebecca, were there any public comments?
There are none.
None? Okay. Does anyone have questions of Jordan? No?
Anybody need some wake-up pills?
I have a question. So the $4.7 million, why does that need to be issued by June 30th? What's the
2030.
June 30th, 20?
Yeah.
What's the driver there?
I might have to pull in the historians on this one, but part of it is when you establish urban renewal plans and create an agency, you are affecting overlapping tax districts, like the fire district, for example, and the SBRD and stuff, where because of the division of taxes and how you fund urban renewal, they do see a decrease in their tax collections, right? That's why it pops on your property tax bill. You don't pay increased taxes, by the way. It's division of taxes from overlapping tax districts. So I'm going somewhere with the story. There's sort of a negotiation that has to happen with those overlapping tax districts to either share the benefits or compromise on certain impacts, like when is the district going to conclude and when can I see the return on my investment for this urban renewal. So I think that's one piece of it, is a commitment to the overlapping tax districts that eventually this district will be done with doing projects and will sunset and will start paying off the debt so that it will go back on the tax rolls. And so I think there's also an interest a lot of with urban renewal agencies is knowing when is that coming? When can we expect that we're going to be done with this plan so that we can tell our citizens, that we've concluded the plan, we've accomplished what we wanted, and now that those benefits will be shared amongst the overlapping tax districts. Is that?
Yeah, I would say it's very accurate.
If I'm not mistaken, that district was supposed to sunset in 2025.
Yeah,
And we actually extended it 2 years ago. There was an extension to 2030 because we didn't have the time to basically use all of those funds. And there was a non-binding commitment from the council at the time that if they needed to extend any further, they would go back out to those taxing districts to kind of get their okay on that, which I believe there's 12. that we would have to get.
That sounds about right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jordan, could you explain how this doesn't affect school funding? That's because that's confusing too.
Yeah, I mean, indirectly, it's a small impact, but basically because of the state school formula in the state of Oregon, all the taxes go in one pot, and then per pupil, it's allocated back out, right? So there's not a direct, like, because you have a renewal in the city of Sisters, the Sisters school district is impacted by that amount, right? Because it goes into that state formula.
So you could say it impacts the whole state as a whole, but it's such a small amount divided between
Yeah.
everybody. And
Yeah,
other
and-
cities have it too, so.
Yeah,
That's what I-
schools are different. It's not as directly impacted as, say, the fire district or the city, which we can pinpoint.
Not a straight line.
Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and you look at a URA district, Portland or Salem or some of those areas, their budget is significantly higher than what we're talking. But I think that it's an interesting philosophical discussion. We know we need to do something with Adams Street. By doing so, like I said, we make that walkable downtown core. And the grants, loans, incentives, those sorts of things. So there is some discussion. We don't, technically, there's nothing that says that we can't let that $4.7 million just go away. Never use it. It's not, you're not required to use it. But I think that we're here to try to prove these parts of the community, and Adams Street's been on there for a while, kind of gets kicked down the road a little bit. And I think that when those improvements are made, from what I've seen anyway in our discussions, it'll drive, I think, some additional business type growth to Adams, and, really contribute to that, as well as making it a better residential area for those folks that are in that area that do have residences there or run small businesses out of their residences. So the other sort of nebulous things, future downtown amenities, loans, technical assistance grants, et cetera, those are kind of nice placeholders that really don't have anything defined on them at this point in time. Is that accurate?
Not necessarily, yeah, I mean, if you go into the plan, I mean, it gets into the things like we've done with First Street Park and other
Right.
pedestrian improvements and connectivity,
So a splash pad in the middle of Cascade, once we get the alternate route built,
right.
could be a combination car wash and amenity.
Pedestrian streets, right? Well, I mean, there's, property acquisition is another, and the plan can change. It's a minor amendment if the council or the Urban Renewal Agency Board wanted to look at the plan and make some new projects or something, but indebtedness cannot, the maximum indebtedness.
Quick question, if we, let's say, found a way to get these projects paid with the 4.7 million in the next 2 years, could we sunset it early or close it early if we use most of the money or all the money?
Well, the only way you'd be closing it early is if, which we have a potential here, is if you see massive investment in the district, so you're collecting even more tax increment that then can pay off the debt.
The debt, yeah.
sooner.
Okay.
Because you're still gonna have this lag of having to pay the debt, but you're not gonna issue any new debt, right? So over time, that's gonna continue to go down until all the debt's paid off, and then you can close the district officially. The question that we have, now that we're seeing, growth in that tax increment is how much debt can we issue of that maximum indebtedness that's remaining to basically capitalize on that without changing the date of 2030? Or how close can we get, is there a chance that, oh, we're just a year or two off from, being able to go and bond the rest of it and build a big project? And could we get the other districts to kind of go along with that? Seeing that there would be benefits in doing that to be able to do a better project or more projects.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Jordan? We're on to the budget presentation by Joe.
Yeah, so if you want to flip to page 101, this is more of a spreadsheet type format. Oh, sure, that either or. Do you want to keep it sharing?
Everybody has a budget, but we could just do that.
We can, that's fine. So look at, is everyone at page 101? 101, excuse me. Oh, is not a number, even though we say it a lot. You notice that?
Finance guy.
Oh.
So looking at the current taxes, that's line item 20-400-302. So we're budgeting to have $485,000 of tax increment financing from property taxes. And we're kind of using the same percentage as we did with the city's tax. So that's the 5.8%. So that's a big number to see there. You'll see, previous taxes and interest. Interest is a lot less for some of the same reasons that the city's interest is a lot less. We're going to be using a lot of this cash, and we'll kind of go over that in a moment. Now, keep in mind that the debt service fund's primary duty is to collect the taxes and pay debt, right? Just those two things. So if you look a little bit further down, this is going to be line 802, so 20-500-802. That's for $600,000. 500,000 of that is to free up project money from the city. So the way this balance goes is the city loans the urban renewal district $500,000 to the project fund, and then the debt service fund pays that $500,000 back to the city. So that's how that amount of funding is freed up. The extra $100,000 is what we expect to pay on that line of credit. And then if you look at just a little bit above there at line 25-00410, about $45,000. So if we transfer the money to the project fund, pay $100,000 worth of line of credit, we've got about $45,000 left of fund balance. Right? So that's what we're trying to kind of balance that out. Odds are we're going to have a larger line of credit balance than $100,000, but that's probably, conservatively the most we'll be able to pay. And Doug, what you might be thinking about is, in budgeting, you don't see the loan balance there at all. It's more cash basis. So it's not a balance sheet. So we don't have a loan, due in this budget. That's just the payment, just for reference. So that's kind of the debt service fund. Does that make sense to everybody?
Clarification.
Yeah.
It took me a while to wrap my head around this when I got to council. Current practice for most of the projects we've been doing recently, they're relatively small. So in order to not have to pull from a line of credit and pay interest on that, we kind of do the funding mechanism of moving money from the general fund.
Yep.
Pay for it, and then the debt service was all it can do is pay off debt.
Correct.
Pays it back to the general fund literally
Simultaneously.
simultaneously, and that avoids having to go out and negotiate a loan for that amount of money and those sorts of things. And it has to do with the way urban renewal districts operate in terms of how they can pay off debt. When we talk about some of these big projects, there will be, as you mentioned, a line of credit, which will look more like a traditional, what people would typically see in a traditional go out and get a loan to do something. That
Yep.
payment would go then towards those loan payments.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That would be to a banker.
Taking it back, what's going on here? It seems like food for thought.
Yeah, it is.
And,
That's okay. No offense taken.
anybody who ram ramps their truck, that's who it really.
Yeah, I mean, it's unique for two reasons. One of them is that we don't have a long-term loan, right? Number one. And number two is that coincidentally, the projects that we've been needing to do these past 3 years in the URA have been about that $400,000, right? So we've been able to kind of cash fund those, if you will, through that mechanism. Now, when we're going to be doing larger dollar projects, we need to develop different funding mechanisms to do that. However, we want to still keep in mind, as Jordan said, the current interest rates and the current environment, it's going to be better value for the agency to just do kind of a line of credit or like a short-term loan and pay that off, knowing that we're going to get that, $480,000 of increment per year, pay that off. And then whatever the agency decides to do with the maximum indebtedness, we can get a larger loan at that point, or at least strategize, do we wait for interest rates, good or bad, till 20? Odds are it's going to come earlier because of the amount of projects that we have on the project list.
Is that it for you, Joe?
For the debt fund, it is.
About the debt fund? No, I know it's confusing.
Yes.
I do have a flow chart that Carrie made that's very helpful.
Where
is it?
Yeah, we need that.
It's proprietary. I changed the fonts and copy wrote it, so I actually do have it, but it's okay. I think you have the concept.
All right, with no questions, comments, we're going to the Urban Renewal Project Fund page, no page number. Joe,
Thank you. So if you go to page 103, you can see at the first line there, well, actually the second line below interest is line 21,400,347. So like I said before, that line includes the $500,000 from the debt service fund, okay? And then you have another $650,000, $650,000 from that borrowing, and that will give us the amount of, or give the agency the amount of money to do the projects it has set forth that Jordan talked about. So you have, the West Side Pump Station, the workforce housing, and then the roundabout contribution. So putting those three things together, you're going to need that much more resources. So we're getting that through that debt transfer and then the line of credit.
Sorry, you said 500K and then 650K?
Oh, yeah, I was a little short. Yep.
It's,
Another 550,000, not six.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Total 1,472.
I'll say that again. Oh, yeah, well, that includes the fund balance. Yep. Yeah, so you're including that fund balance in that, in the ability to do those projects. And so as Jordan talked about before, going down here to line 21,500,700, you have some administrative expenses, some auditing fees, because the Urban Renewal Agency has its own, has to have its own audit rather. And then you have some technical assistance, if we do need some technical assistance for bonding or for the line of credit, then we'll use that line item to pay for that.
Is that what we would pay like our URA consultant that we've had before?
Yeah, bond counsel, we've engaged with bond counsel. They've been nice enough to not send us a bill that I've seen. So some of that's been pro bono, but I think once we get more serious about this, then we'll have, some real invoices coming across the desk. And that's all I have for the project fund. And then those projects are what Jordan already talked about.
any questions on the budget or the project fund? No, no?
It still feels like voodoo to me. but
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, me too sometimes. Yeah.
Somewhere here, I thought you were looking for approval or a head nod for maximum indebtedness, or was that at a council level? Was wishful thinking on my part, maybe.
Yeah, let's position the budget committee to commit to moving that. No, the actions today are just the approval of the budget and the division of tax amount of 485. The maximum indebtedness, yeah, that's the maximum indebtedness you can't move. It's
Right.
the date, and that's what we're going to be working with the council on, or the board actually, on analyzing that. What would be left on the table if we didn't extend the date? Can we accomplish all the remaining projects in the plan?
I mean, that's not a goal we have for this next fiscal year. We'll be talking about it this next fiscal year for the fiscal years later. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's one of those explorer goals.
Yeah, I gotcha.
The only comment I have is that this is the most confusing fund that the city has.
Agreed.
Has great long-term benefits for the community, and for what it's worth, I think use everything that you're able to use because it's easy funding with great positive results. So that's my 2 cents.
And it helps all 12 taxing districts as well.
Yes.
I mean, it
Yes.
helps them, so.
Right, so we have a committee discussion coming up now about the discussion of the motion. And I'm going to start with Gary. Do you have any comments, concerns?
No, I think I'd only muddy the water more.
Doug?
No comments.
Susan? Nothing? Robin?
Nothing.
Michael?
No.
No. No? No? Wow, you guys are easy. That, or you want out of here by 2?
That or Joe did a really good job explaining it yesterday to me.
Oh, that could be. that
Thank
could
you.
be. All right, so I'm looking for a motion that would have the Budget Committee approve property taxes for fiscal year 2024-25 for the Sisters Urban Renewal Agency to be derived through the division of tax in the amount of $485,000.
I move as stated by Nancy Connolly. I'll
Second.
Right up there.
Moved and seconded is no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Yay, yay. And then now I just need a motion.
I move to approve a budget for the fiscal year 24-25, the Urban Renewal Agency in the amount of $2,118,407.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed? No? Okay. Before I adjourn, I want to take a few moments to express my appreciation for Dave Moyer. Don't know why I'm so upset about this. Our families go way back. Before Donna Moyer was Donna Moyer, she was my husband's first grade classroom assistant in Calbuta Elementary. So, you know, a lot of history there. Our sons worked on 4 service projects together out of Ben Lapine and Summon Sisters. Thank you. And I had the pleasure of working with Dave in some capacity at the city level for 10 years. So thank you for honoring him with the notebook that you had and the upcoming projects. And more importantly, thank you for allowing me to try to carry on his efforts in community service. So thank you. I appreciate your participation today. I appreciate all of the staff here and out on the streets working and in the office. You do a fabulous job. And just final note about the amount of money we approved today. I tried to dig up Prineville Lapine Madras rates of taxes, and I could not yesterday. They made it really hard. But the closest I could come with Medford, which is paying $5.29 per 1,000. And so even though we have increases in our tax rates here, they're still much lower than communities around the area that I don't think do nearly the work that we do. So same time next year. I adjourn the meeting.
Well said.
Thank you.
There's no crying in